to The Thirsty Professional. This is a place where we grab a bevy, we ditch the BS, and we get real about careers, purpose, and passion. I'm your host, Beth Ann Campbell. I'm a former corporate queen. I've traded in my tiara. Well, not really. I actually have one, but I traded in my corporate queen tiara for creative freedom and business badassery. I'm also author of the award-winning Where the Hell is My Bacon? If you're watching live, let us know you're here in the comments, where you're from, and most importantly, what are you drinking this morning or this afternoon? If you're watching the replay, please give us a hashtag replay. And of course, make sure to let us know if you have any questions or feedback so we can address it during this live stream or maybe on a future episode. Today, my very special guest on The Thirsty Professional is Jyotsna Hofmann. So I met Jyotsna last year about this time when we were both enrolled in a very comprehensive business mindset program called Thinking into Results. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I have been so impressed with Jyotsna's progress. She is like that. She's kind of the superstar of the program. And I'm not kidding. I hope she doesn't mind if I fangirl a little bit, but she's really been embracing the concepts. And I know it's not all been, golden, it's up and down, but really if there is an award for perseverance and moving through and trying new things, which I love, this Jyotsna gets the gold star. So she is a success mindset coach. She is a rapid transformation therapist, which I think we'll talk a little bit about because some of you may not know what that is. Hypnotherapist, and her mission is to help driven entrepreneurs and leaders break free from those mental blocks, subconscious obstacles that keep them stuck in self-doubt and overthinking so they can step into their full potential with confidence and ease. We're going to dive into mindset topics today and maybe help you out there figure out your subconscious blocks and habits and get you flying into success. And of course, we're going to explore a little bit Jyotsna's journey from consultant project manager to success mindset coach. I love talking old corporate with people. Everybody, please help me welcome Jyotsna Hofmann. Jyotsna, welcome to The Thirsty Professional.
Hi, Beth. I'm so happy to be here and thank you for such a lovely introduction. And I'm excited.
You're very welcome. Yeah, me too. So we're going to talk lots of fun mindset stuff today. This is one of my favorite things. When I started this program, I hadn't had any guests lined up. So I did 3 or 4 episodes solo, and it was all about mindset stuff because I just love self-awareness and learning things. So I'm so happy I love that I'm talking with somebody who has kind of been on the same learning path as me. And you've kind of gone from student now to teacher. And we're going to talk about that too. But before we talk about all that great stuff, what are you drinking today? Do you have a bevy today?
So I have a tea and I have some water.
Ooh, very cute little, can I see your mug again? I love it. It's given me cute.
It's usually these beach huts in England at the beach. Yeah.
So let me ask you something about your mug. I know that the folks in the UK get very particular when us US people talk about microwaving our tea or our coffee. Do you ever microwave your tea to warm it up a little bit, maybe?
So I don't microwave my tea, but I do microwave coffee if it's gone cold and just, whack it in the microwave for a quick, just slightly warmed up. But tea, no, it has to be done properly. So boiling water in a kettle and you put the tea bag in, and that's how this one was made.
Yes, it has to be done properly. That's what I hear. Well, it's an interesting that I've found because I'm a bit of a mug whore. So I have a lot of mugs in fact, my husband and I have so many cups and mugs that we have an agreement that if we buy a new one, we have to donate or sell or get rid of a mug because we have so many of them. But what I find is very interesting, I've noticed this, is because I microwave my coffee every day because I'm sitting here, I'm working, and it just gets cold and I have a little warmer, but sometimes it doesn't go as fast. And I find that some of my mugs, the handle will get really, really hot in the microwave, and some of them are just normal. So I had to look this up. I was like, why does this happen? And it turns out there are a lot of reasons for this. But do you find that you have certain mugs that, or maybe you just have the one that's beautiful and you just reuse that one?
No, I haven't had that problem before, but then I'm not heating it to the max either. I'm just, for a few seconds, just to get my coffee a little bit more warmer than it was. Because I don't like very hot drinks, actually. I like it to be a little bit, more lukewarm kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just not cold, right?
Yeah, no, not cold. And usually, like we have an espresso machine, so I just get myself
Oh,
a
nice.
espresso and try and drink it as quickly as possible.
I love that. I want an espresso machine. I have kind of a fake espresso machine. It's one of those all-in-ones, and it kind of does it, but not like good espresso. So, I'm going to check in with the comments here before we jump into the meat of today. We have Gary Morgan joining us. Hi, Gary. Nice to see you. See, I've got my flowered shirt on here. We were talking about flowered shirts. He says he's looking forward to a headspace, my rejig. Yes, we're going to talk about headspace. We're going to talk about getting out of those stuck spaces. And then Stella Scott has joined us, and Stella says she doesn't even have a microwave. How do you even function, Stella? How does that even? I know I sound so American when I say that, but we use our microwave all the time, and my husband especially. He is a microwave meal person, so I don't know what we would do. We have had two at a time. We have had two microwaves in our kitchen, but
No, we definitely have a microwave. I mean, I didn't used to use microwave before. I didn't know how to use a microwave, but then it's just so convenient to heat up food, and
yeah.
especially yeah, when you're on the go. So yeah.
Well, fun fact, I didn't know that I until I think I was February years old when I found out how microwaves actually work. Is they hit the water content or the moisture,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons why some mugs or cups, depending on the material that you use, it can be more porous, which allows more water in there, and that's why sometimes when you microwave a mug, some of my mugs, I'm piping hot in the mug part, but the handle is just perfect. But sometimes it's hot enough to burn, so I have to be careful to remember.
Yeah.
Um, so Jyotsna, let's jump in. I want to talk first a little bit about your journey to here, right? So you moved to the UK 2007. Am I getting that right?
Yes, yes, I
Yes,
did.
and
Yes.
you were at that time where you were a like a corporate consultant, right? And you were for many years. What
Yes, I have been, but the journey has been a little bit different. So when I migrated to the UK, I came here as a student. I came here to do my master's in international business. And once I graduated, I started working in advertising. And I started as an account manager and a hybrid project manager. But eventually, I realized that project management is where I really, really enjoy it and my skills are. So I kind of became, a freelance or a contract project director. Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about what that's like. Is that more or less because of course I've talked about my corporate background, but I was not a consultant freelancer in the way that you were. Is it more or less 9 to 5 and you're working for clients and you bring you on to manage a project? And I would say similar to a traditional corporate project management job other than your freelance.
So just to clarify, I started as a perm employee first,
Oh,
but
okay.
once I had my son, I decided to go freelance when I went back to work after maternity leave. And yeah, it's a fairly standard project management role, but because I have ad agency background, so I help execute all those fantastic creative ideas, all these TV commercials and ads that you see on screen. So I basically work with creative directors on concepting through from starting from ideation, idea generation, ideation
Yeah.
to concepting to actually producing it for it to come to life in the public domain. So yeah, that was kind of pretty much my life. I absolutely loved it. Advertising agencies have a slightly different culture, actually a lot more
Well, we've all
different
seen Mad
than
Men.
this.
We've
Yeah.
seen Mad Men.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the culture is very different. It's a lot more relaxed, and there isn't that much of a hierarchy there. And you can speak up your mind, and they do encourage you to be bold and brave. And every agency has their own mission and vision statement, and you always try to emulate and exhibit those qualities and values as
Why
well.
didn't I go into advertising world? Because that would have been perfect for me. I was in tech, starting in utilities and gas and electric, and it was I mean it was great. I had a great boss, but as everybody probably mostly knows I have been very verbal about the not so good stuff. So I would have loved a place that embraced speaking out, because even though I did it and I did it a lot, there were times where I had people that I respected and got along with and really liked that would say, yeah, maybe don't say that. Don't, we don't want to, we need to filter the message here a little bit. So, oh, okay. So you were in kind of a traditional environment, and you went freelance. Is that so? What's in your head? I'm assuming, but correct me if I'm wrong. You just had a child, and of course there's flexibility and maybe a little bit more autonomy. Are those the reasons, or what are the reasons that you decided you wanted to go not in the traditional position?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I couldn't work 4 days a week, which is what I wanted. My employer back then, once I returned from maternity leave, didn't agree to that. And then I just couldn't see that working. And also, I think after a year of maternity leave, I just decided that I wanted to prioritize my son, and I didn't want him to go to a nursery straight away. And so I decided I was just going to take another few months and just see where my head's at. But I think I had already made a decision by then that I want to go freelancing. And so I took some time off, and then spent that time with him, which, was the best decision I made.
Yeah,
That time doesn't come back. And then and freelancing offered me a bit of an autonomy in that I could choose my projects, and I could choose which ones to take and when to work and when to take a break. So it wasn't like I was hopping from projects to projects. Once
yeah,
something finished, I had ample time to take a break, catch up on other things, and still be able to make a decent income that pretty much beat my, full-time employment as
sure,
well.
sure.
So it was actually lots of positives.
So lots of positives. Then what is in your? Tell me the mindset. No pun intended. Tell me the mindset of that evolution from I'm in this freelance work. The work's pretty steady. I can be flexible. I can take a little time off between projects if I want. I have time to spend with my son. What's the mindset of now? I'm going to go from this very what I would call technical traditional project management is pretty similar across the board, just different industries. And now you're going to go kind of 180 degrees into mindset, RTT, hypnotherapy. Tell me how that evolves. How do you get to that point where you are today now?
Yeah, a great question. So when I became a mother, I really wanted to first of all have a career that allowed me that flexibility to work on my own terms. And I realized that the only way I was going to have that is to have my own business and be my own boss. Um, and then the other background to that is that when I came to the UK, I really needed stability. I needed to settle here, financial stability, and build everything from the ground up. And so I loved the job. I absolutely loved it. But after 17 years, I could do it with my eyes closed. It didn't excite me that much anymore. I have worked on numerous big brands, and I would get phone calls like, "Oh, Lego wants, there's a project for Lego," or some really big names. And I realized that didn't really matter to me anymore, and I was yearning to contribute more, to do something different. And I did coach teams as a project manager to help deliver projects, and I absolutely loved that element. And one of my senior managers actually encouraged me to do a course on NLP, which I was interested in.
And what
So I
is
did.
NLP? Can you?
NLP is neuro linguistic programming. So I've done
Neuro.
the foundation course, and I decided to run a taster session, a lunch and learn session at my workplace. And I had overwhelming response. Everyone loved it. And I was quite surprised how much I loved it. And that's where the idea was born that perhaps I could be a coach or a consultant. Um,
Oh,
that's where the idea was born. And then life happens. My son was born, and then I still hadn't quite found the right thing for me. And then COVID happened. And during COVID,
The old COVID. Every conversation, I swear,
I
COVID,
know, I know. And then COVID
life
happened.
changing. Yeah.
And exactly. So I joined this fitness challenge. And what I didn't realize was that mindset was a huge part of it. So it wasn't just about, doing achieving your fitness goals, but it was so much about mindset. And I was actually coached by a coach who had formerly coached some Olympic athletes. And that just opened a whole new world to me.
Yeah.
And I hit my goals. I was in the best shape of my life.
What
And
kind of
then
fitness, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of fitness event?
strength training and running.
Oh,
So
okay.
I
Wow.
did my first half marathon during COVID. I ran my first half marathon, and that very same year I did another half marathon. And I was not the running types. I had been doing strength training and some other forms of exercise. I was always an active person, but I never saw myself as a runner. And in mindset now, they talk about this identity shift and stepping into the that future self identity.
Ooh, yes.
Essentially, they made us step into the identity of what would a runner, think, act, feel, behave,
Yeah.
at every level. And so instead of just running for half marathon, they help with identity shift to become a runner. And that's what happened with me. Is I became a runner after that fitness challenge. And I can't explain it to you. You've been through it, this identity change.
Yes.
Once it's been programmed into you, it's a part of you. It's who you are. I wasn't running because I wanted to run. I was a runner. I
Yeah.
became a runner. That was just
I
part of
love
me.
that. I love
So
this. So even back when you were talking about, it's so interesting to me because I hear the same story from so many, especially women. You get to a certain point, you're successful. You could just keep going and doing whatever it is, but you said you got bored. You kind of got, and there's this fulfillment aspect that I think a lot of women go through, certainly in the traditional professional jobs, corporate and consulting jobs, where you've been doing this, you've been rocking it. And I don't know what it is. I did a whole podcast on this a few years ago. And I know part of it for me was seeing how women start to get treated a little bit differently, but it was also very internal. And perhaps it's hormonal or whatever, or just wisdom that we get because you're not that old. Shouldn't say that, not that old. I'm not that old, but
you're
there
young.
is
You're
there
very
is
young women.
there is an element for so many people and women that I've talked to, getting to the certain age and where the fulfillment aspect becomes so much more important than the steady job, or working your way up the ladder, which some women do have aspirations to that, but even then there's this, it's for fulfillment versus the paycheck, although the paycheck is of course
Absolutely,
needed, but
absolutely. So I wanted that, that flexibility, but also do something that really resonated with me. So it wasn't about just having a steady job and financial stability. It was more about what can I add more, and one thing led to the other. COVID ended, we came back to normal lives, but some of the habit patterns kind of started to creep back in. And I was already on a personal growth journey by then. And one thing led to the other. I came across RTT therapy, and it totally changed my life.
so let's
I
tell, for people who don't know what RTT therapy is, can you explain briefly what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is?
sure. So RTT stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy, and it is a very old method, but it's been kind of reintroduced into a completely different format by someone called Marissa Peer. She's the founder of the method. What she's done is she's taken CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, NLP, which is neurolinguistic programming, psychotherapy, and hypnotherapy, and combined it into one method, making it really quick. Now, there is a belief that all RTT therapists have, is that when we have a headache, we take a pill and we solve the headache and it's gone. So
Yes.
when we have a mental illness or if you're doing something for mental well-being, it doesn't need to be long drawn out. We don't need to see our therapist for months and months and months, only to continually talk about our past and analyze and overanalyze. We want a solution like a pill that we can take, we can get over the headache and move on. Okay. But also address the root cause. So rapid transformational therapy is rapid. You don't need to see a therapist again and again. So for any particular issue, we can pretty much get to your root cause in one session, and then we can continue to build on that. So for example, if you have a block, I don't know why I'm not applying for that job. It could be fear of success, it could be fear of failure, but what is it exactly? Because everyone's blocks are very personal to them, and they all
Yeah.
come from the childhood. So it basically helps with it's very therapeutic, it combines everything, and that's what makes it really fast. A lot of Olympic athletes are using it. Stephen Bartlett has been hypnotized by my teacher. I've trained
Oh,
directly with
wow.
her. And I don't know if you know Mona Katan. She's from Huda Beauty. She's the co-founder of Huda Beauty. She has used RTT. So RTT has always been available to Hollywood
The
clientele,
elite. Yeah.
the elite. But what Marissa has done is she's taught the method to people like me, and so she's made it accessible.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome.
it's accessible to everyone. It's based on that if you are suffering with something, it doesn't need to be long drawn out.
Yeah.
Let's have a couple of sessions, let's get rid of it so you can move on with your life.
Yeah, and I just want to say for the purposes of disclaimer that we are not giving medical advice here, and there are reasons that people would benefit from, therapy, a psychiatrist, psychologist. So we're not saying everything in the world that has ever happened to you, is fixable in an instant. But there are so many things, I think, to your point, that people hold on to, and they become issues that they're not, it's not, extreme trauma or abuse where but it becomes that because we're so stuck, right?
Yeah.
And probably can be beneficial
Our
in
kind
other
of,
cases.
it's the meaning we attach to these events that happen, and they play in our heads like in a loop. So, yeah.
So you talked about one example of, somebody who maybe is, fearful about a job. What are some of the other things that you see in some of your clients? I know everybody's different, but maybe just for the sake of audience identification, what are some types of subconscious blocks that people might have? What does that manifest in where they might go, yes, I would like to talk to Jyotsna and have her help me?
Yeah, so great question again. So worthiness, self-worth. I see that a lot, especially in executive level leaders.
And what
Uh,
does that look like? What is a person who's in an executive level, how does that manifest that how do they know? What do they
Yeah, so I'll take example of a recent client of mine, head of marketing in a corporate environment, but wanting a seat at the round table, but not feeling like they were seen or heard or recognized. And they had a story that if I speak up, I'm ignored anyway, so why speak up? And also they question themselves, am I actually worth it? Is that the reason why I don't have that seat at the table? They had all the right qualities, but they weren't quite coming across in the way they wanted to be. They were not being perceived like that either. And this particular client was very self-aware that I think it was something around worthiness, and so that's what we worked on. But often clients will come to me like, I'm really stressed about something and I don't know why. I have a pattern and I keep doing this pattern at workplace. This particular client had a particular pattern, which is perhaps getting a little bit upset in meetings, because she had a story playing in her head essentially, and getting upset in meetings, not visibly upset, but internally
Oh,
getting
yeah,
really
which can
upset,
be worse, I
and then
know, because it's
brewing and brewing. So
hard.
basically unfulfilled in her job. She came to me and said, I'm really frustrated. I'm unfulfilled in my job. I don't feel like I'm seen, I'm heard, and I'm going to leave the job. And I said, you can leave the job, but if you haven't worked on the stuff that is causing these patterns, you can go to a new job and these patterns will show up again, and you will attract the same kind of situations. And that's how, we started working with her. So worthiness is a lot of people associate working hard with success, and so they're trying a lot.
Yep.
They're putting a lot of pressure on themselves to perform, perfectionism, self-criticism. I'm not doing enough, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's something that, I have to work on every day, especially as a project manager, where, results happen by doing stuff, right? You make things happen. So often these people can get really caught up in that pattern again, trying too hard, being perfectionist, being really harsh on themselves, being very critical. And so, though they are seemingly successful on the outside and they seem to be doing well on the the inside story is completely different. Their quality of life, their quality of relationships, and the relationship with themselves is often quite bad, and needs there's a lot of room for improvement. So these are the
Yeah.
type of, but I
Yeah.
work on procrastination, imposter syndrome, confidence is a big one, but all sorts of blocks, but they all lead to one thing.
Yeah.
It's all
There's so many.
worthiness, self-love. Yeah.
I love what you said about, we were talking a few times, you mentioned the patterns and this is part of what we can look at to recognize. That's what one of the things that I've had to look at is, what are the patterns? What are the things that I'm repeating that are I know, like, I don't want to do this, or I should do this, and I know it will make me feel better, but I just don't do it, or I continue to do this even though it makes me feel like shit.
Mhm.
So where do those patterns come from? I mean, where does that originate, right? Talk a little bit about where are these obstacles even coming from, and how do, and when we recognize these patterns, where do they come from?
So these patterns actually start quite early in life. So when we are born with a preset wiring in our brain for survival. So baby is born and it'll cry and it'll look for food because that's how they're wired. But as they're growing, yeah, exactly, like all of us, and when babies are born, we only have a subconscious brain. It can feel mom's heartbeat when they are, in the womb. They can feel the fluids around them. They can feel food and all of that. So as soon as a fetus is born, it has a subconscious mind. It can sense and feel things, which is why you may have heard, pregnant women are often advised to have low stress and be happy, and as much as
Right.
the baby feels it. And as we grow older, our conscious mind starts to develop, and that doesn't happen till much later in life. So, up to the age of 5, you have been automatically been recording everything that's going on around you, usually from parents. So you start forming a picture, an idea of the world through the things they're saying around you. So if there's a money issue in the family and they're talking a lot about money, let's say they're arguing about money, child may form a belief that money causes strain in relationships. Or if mom's saying or dad is saying we can't afford that, then they form a belief that money is scarce. By the age of 5, we have formed all beliefs about love, money, relationships by just recording, watching what's happening around us. By the age of 7, it's pretty much set. So these blocks come from childhood. So when I work with my clients, I regress them all the way to their childhood. For example, in this particular client, again, we regressed her to the childhood, and it just turns out that, a lot of hand me downs. She didn't really deserve, she was
Yeah.
worthy of anything. Parenting was a little bit different back then, stuff from the society about what women can and can't do.
It's
And
it's
children just absorb it
mind-boggling.
automatically. Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend of mine this morning about the things that we were talking about it in a more positive note, about the things that just very serendipitous but random things that happen in our lives. So for me, now I was in my 20s, but I was a nanny, and they just happened to have an old computer. This was back in the in the very early 90s, and it was an old Apple IIe computer sitting on the table in the basement where I lived. And I just one day, and I like to write, but I wrote on paper and I didn't write, extensively, because it's, your arm starts to hurt. And then I thought, well, let me just pull this, and just the fact that this little computer was sitting there, no one was using it. And I had the thought, maybe I could write on this computer. Started my whole journey with writing and writing books and writing more extensively. But I think it's important for people to understand that, just exactly what you said, and I've dealt with this with myself, with I had a brother who came home, he was 2 years older than me, and he came home from school and had all these lovely fat names for his little sister, and that was ingrained and ingrained. I didn't even know it, and I believed from the time that I can even remember, so I was probably 4 at the time. I
Mhm.
believed that I was fat and ugly and unworthy, even though, and I believed that I really was fat and chubby, even
Yeah.
until I looked at back at my pictures when I was in my 30s, and I said, "Wait a minute, I wasn't a fat 4-year-old, but I believed it."
Yeah.
So I think the important thing that I would say for people is to remember is that all of this stuff happens and you have no control over it. You're a child. So it is really luck of the draw. That doesn't mean that you can't change it. There's absolutely hope, but people who are out there thinking about the things that happened in their childhood, that it's just a lost cause. It's not a lost cause, but also it's not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point that you've made, that it's not your fault. And going back to your, of course, if you get a cat, right, and if you stroke it and if you feed it, cat knows that I'm lovable. But if you kick that cat, do you think the cat will believe that she's lovable? No, she'll like, well, maybe something's wrong with me, because a cat doesn't have logic. Children don't have logic. Logic
Yeah.
comes later. They don't understand that, mum is crying, for example, because of it's her problem, she will sort it. A child will think, what did I do wrong? Is it
Yeah.
my fault? Have I done something? Because they don't have that faculty, they don't have the faculties to actually reason and logic. And which is why they take anything that you say as the truth. There's a
Yes.
certain age, I can't remember exactly. If the parent leaves the room, the child has the belief that the parent is never coming back. I think it's by two up to 2 years old. The child doesn't know that, so you're really essentially, as you said, just recording everything that's going around you. In fact, I had a session this morning with a client, and her brother came up, and we're working on some of her compulsive behaviors at the moment.
Mhm.
And they root back to the fight over food they had as
Right.
kids,
Well,
and
it's
how he
same with
was
yeah.
aggressive.
And so this is so great for me because this is exactly, I had a lot of brothers and sisters. So I had an older brother. I was the first oldest female. So I had him coming home. And by the way, I don't blame, my brother's, he's passed away, but I had a great relationship as an adult with my brother. I loved him very much. He had the heart of, his heart was as big as Canada, but he didn't know what he was doing. But I had siblings that I had conflict with. There was competition. There was certainly competition for food, so that's a big thing
Mhm,
for me. My
mhm.
parents then, not knowing any better, said, "You know what? Let's lock up the food that they're competing over. Let's make it even more enticing to them." So these are all things that I have, even just in the past year, have really started to recognize.
Mhm.
So again, to underscore people who, when you have these patterns, there's so many things you could not possibly control. Even the most aware, meaning parent isn't able to control
Yeah.
everything and isn't going to do it right. And by the way, there's also a lot of good for people that come out of that. So, keeping it positive, there are things that happen that, I am the way I am today, and because of things that happen, and I learned because of probably this competition, learn to fight a little bit harder and speak out. And I don't regret that at all, but it's so out of control that nobody should ever feel guilty about, why am
Yeah.
I this way? You're this way because this is just how life is. We really could not prevent it if we tried.
Exactly. And as you said, right, it's nobody's fault. It's just how the brain works. It's how, interpret. And this is where, with therapy and confidence building exercises, you can really build that confidence. It's really no one's fault. It is just how it is. It's just that it starts to become a problem when it starts to hold you back in your career or your business, or hold you back from your dreams. That's when it becomes a problem. So I see in most of the high achievers that I work with, self-worth is always up there, because their self-worth is tied to what they achieve, because they were probably also achieving high in their childhood. They were probably getting feedback like, you got grade A, so
Yes.
you're lovable, and if
Yes.
you get grade C, now you're not so lovable. So it happens, but it actually makes these people perform better because they have something to prove. And
Yeah.
so and my perfectionism comes from that as well. When I have to do everything up to a standard, because that was what was required of me. And it's not in a bad way. But, it is my superpower because it got me
Yeah.
where I am. So I absolutely don't want to get rid of it. But I also recognize when it becomes a supervillain, and just to dial it down. Do I really need a perfect website? No. This is where
Yeah.
I can dial down my perfectionism. When I'm serving my client, do I need to give my best possible? Yes, I do. So I dial it up. So it's just recognizing that these are just parts of us. No one's perfect, and
Yeah.
there's no such thing as perfection. And I, as a mindset coach and as a mom, still make mistakes, and it's fine. I don't want to give my child this perfect childhood, because he's going to grow up and then look for that perfection in his relationships, and that doesn't exist.
Yeah, 100%.
Good
So
for
tell me
children
what it
conflict and conflict resolution.
Yeah, absolutely, and I wanna talk probably a little bit in a minute about, because I love talking about discomfort and failure and how important it is that we, deal with that and not try to fix everything. Just real quick, just to kinda wrap up the what you're doing now, what is that tell me, what is it like when somebody has that revelation or they've worked with you and now they are, and they are unstuck. What does that look like? Do you have a favorite unstuck story?
I have quite a few stories. I'll maybe use a couple of examples. So I'll quote the same client who was really unfulfilled and struggling in their job, wanting a seat at the table. They had been looking for a new job, but with a very pessimistic mindset. Am I going to get a job? Are things going to improve? Lots of questions. But through our work, within months, she found herself a new job. She was absolutely candid at the new interview. She said, for the first time, I went to an interview and I didn't say what I thought they wanted me to say, but I said what was on my mind, who I am. I openly discussed my issues in the previous workplace, which I would never do in a job interview. But she decided to just bear it all. And she got hired and she got made one of the board of directors as well. So that was a big win. And that's how it manifested for her. I have another client. She's a graphic designer. She runs a studio with her business partner. And through the same work that we did, she started with, I just want to be comfortable in my own skin. I don't feel confident. And we worked through all those layers. She's made new business decisions. Her business is growing. And as a byproduct of all that confidence work we've done, it's had a completely unexpected impact on her personal relationships as well.
Love it.
Business growing, her business is growing because she's showing up differently in her business. She was having some conflict with her business partner, and now she's understands where her triggers are and where those triggers were coming from, and she's dealt with them. She can deal with her business partner in a much more calm and more supportive and beneficial way that is actually taking her now to the next level.
I love that your comment about how it impacted other areas of her life, because I think for me, the work that I have done on these different areas of mindset, self-image, and we'll talk about a few of them in a minute because I just love it. Um, but it's really interesting that not only has it helped me in my journey through entrepreneurship, but it's also helped me recognize in my past, in my traditional 23-year corporate job, how much I really had influence and how much I made worse because of what I was not controlling and because of what I was not dealing with within. Not to say that I didn't have things coming at me but they were out of my control. And I hope we can talk a little bit about our responsibility, but then also, personal life, where you just start being aware of when you're doing things, those patterns hit, and the more that you work on it, the more you're aware, and the more it really does help every area of your life. Even if your focus is work or your focus is a relationship, it's going to help you everywhere.
Exactly. And I like to say that the best journey you'll ever make is the journey of self discovery.
Oh,
This
yes.
process
That should
really
be on a
helps.
t-shirt, Jyotsna.
Yeah.
Let's put that on
Yeah.
or a mug.
That's like the best journey you're going to make is the journey of, understanding who you are, what drives you. Like, why do you behave the way you do? What drives you? And once you understand that, changing your behavior and changing your life is really simple. And that's actually what I'm really, really passionate about. I just see when my life changed, I was asking myself, why isn't the world doing this? Why isn't everyone doing this? And so that's why I'm on this mission to bring it, to as many people and transform as many lives as
Right.
I can.
Why
Because
aren't
it's
we
so
teaching this in schools? This is what I always say is why isn't this, a required teaching in schools? I want to check in with the comments really quickly. We have Praveen Sahib, who's joining us. Hi, Praveen. Stella says a lot of women go to the corporate ladder to, quote, prove something. From my female leader clients, I've seen a lot of imposter syndrome. Yeah, it's pretty rampant. I think all people do, especially as we get older. Well, maybe not just as we get older. Actually, as I get older, sometimes I just give less of a F. But yeah, I've seen it in the corporate world too. Scott Smith is joining us. The amazing Scott Smith. I was just on Scott's podcast, at the Outsourcing Blueprint, and it's out there. I will throw a link in the comments. It's amazing, not just because I'm on it, but just because Scott is amazing. He was like my people. I call him my. I think what did I call you? My internal twin. Anyway, Scott says I'm always lovable. Haha, lol. LOL. You must be not a Gen Zer, Scott. We're not supposed to say LOL anymore. I'm just kidding. But excellent points. Yes, thank you for joining, Scott. You're awesome. And by the way, Scott's going to be on this podcast live in a few weeks, in April. So looking forward to that. Okay, so Jyotsna, I just want to jump in because we're running out of time here, but I just love talking about this stuff. So you and I met through a program that we were enrolled in called Thinking into Results. Very comprehensive mindset program through the Proctor Gallagher Institute. Great. If anybody's interested, they run a masterclass every month. Take the masterclass. If nothing else, you'll learn so much there. But we've had a lot of lessons, facts and stories, and we've learning about gratitude and responding versus reacting, and self-image and failure and discomfort. What do you think for you has been the most, as far as your full mindset journey, what is one of the most important things that you have learned about mindset? You probably talked about some of them already, but
Yeah, so one of the most important things that I've learned is just the amount of deep work that you can do, that into when it comes to stepping into that self-image. So within RTT, we do a lot of visualization. So we get the client to imagine and craft that avatar of who they want to be and what that life looks like once they're free of the problem. And Bob Proctor's program actually takes it a level further. It really takes it really, really deep. You may
yeah,
recall, how actors and actresses do it. They go into a different character and they become that character.
yes,
So I think
yes,
that's been really, really really amazing, which I now bring into my practice a bit more. And then just how, again, because rapid transformational therapy works with the subconscious mind. So I was familiar with the concepts already because hypnotherapy essentially talks to the subconscious mind. We don't deal with the conscious mind. But again, just understanding even deeply at a much deeper level how we are picking up these programs. I think that was, again, it was more for me. Bob Proctor's program has been an in-depth study, a more deep dive into the subconscious mind, and how to break those patterns through other ways. So I use hypnotherapy as one of the tools within RTT to break those patterns, like auto suggestions, listening to transformation recordings. So I essentially give my clients recordings to listen to. I make customized recordings for them. But how to actually ingrain those habits sustainably. I think those have been really, really key. Really, lots of actionable points as well. How you
yeah.
can actually emulate that, behavior. So I think it's been really, really useful to go so deep dive into it.
I love that when you talk about the subconscious, because I think people, this is probably one of the big revelations for me, is the realization, the acknowledgement that most of what's happening in my life is happening subconsciously, that I'm not, it's like I call it a cruise control, right? And this is what we talked about earlier. It's these beliefs and these habits that we form throughout our life from when we were very young, sometimes from trauma, and they pivot us back onto this path unless we address them. So for me, I pivot onto the path of you're fat and you're ugly and you're unworthy, even though I'm aware of it, but I have to constantly work on it and work on my self-image
Mhm.
because we're so driven by our subconscious. I love so that, and that's exactly what you do. You deal with that subconscious. We think that all our lives are, most of us think our lives are driven or reactions to the world around us. But the truth is that it's all, I mean, it is reaction sometimes, but it's subconscious. And I think that's a really important thing that I realize is that, wow, it's not about all of this stuff coming at me. It's me and all of this stuff that happened in my past that's coming forward that I haven't dealt with,
Mhm.
that's now driving what I do and how I relate and interact with the world. It's really
Yeah, and
interesting.
I would like to share a little like insight from my personal life here. So when RTT happened to me, I had no realization of who I was and why I was doing what I was doing. And I had been through that mindset coaching during COVID and I was getting results. It was all good. But that's when I started to recognize that there was something deeper running the show. And this was my life before RTT hit me. I was successful in my career, married, happily married, had a boy. Everything looked fine, but I felt really unfulfilled. Part of that was having a different career that was a more rewarding career, but something else was missing. And what I realized, the biggest realization, my first session was on self esteem. And I realized that I was very confident, but my self esteem was really low.
Yes.
Did not know
Same.
the difference
Yeah.
between confidence and self esteem. And that was when the light bulb went on for me. And I realized that I did everything in my life up to that point for two reasons: proving something to my parents in my mind, and also fear, fear of failure. Failure was not an option because I was taught, it was drilled into me that failure is not an option. It's something that still will surface up. But when I realized that I spent an entire life, I was in my 40s when that happened, when I had my first session. I've spent kind of like so many years already just doing that. And so I really had to undo those patterns. And now I can say that I have a healthy self esteem.
Yeah.
And I'm doing things because I want to do them, not because I need to be a good Indian daughter, good Indian housewife, and all the rest and fit into the society. Um, and so, I feel more fulfilled and fully expressed as a human now because I was not expressing myself. I was just doing things to make others happy. I was a massive people pleaser, massive people pleaser.
Yeah.
I
I
was not.
I think this is so important for people too because what you're saying resonates for me with my story. It's different, but also to the outside world, they're looking at Beth Campbell as you're successful, you're making a lot of money, you're in this corporate job, you're leading people, you're leading projects, and everything's great. But inside, there is still this subconscious feeling of the driver. It's the habits and the beliefs coming into play, but it's also this sense of it's not enough and it's not and what is it, why is that, what's wrong with me, I thought I was, and you don't even think, well, of course I'm a confident person, of course, look, everyone says I have a podcast and I have, but then I realize I'm not. My self-image, which like you said is not the same thing. Self-image is not the same as confidence. I had it, that was a real eye-opener for me too, is like, hey, um, you don't love yourself unconditionally. You don't accept yourself, and you have some work to do. And I do every day, and it'll never go away. But the more aware you are, so I think it's really interesting how we have this perception of, again, it's this outside world versus the inside world. And I'm sure people probably looked at you, Jyotsna, and they said, and you probably sometimes when you hear stuff, when I say things like, oh, Jotson's the, she is the golden child of the program, and everybody, and they do, it's true, but probably there's a part of you that the inner critic says, well, but I've struggled too, and I'm not the best, whatever it is that you're being challenged with, but it's that inner versus outer. But people would look at you and say, well, look at, she's just amazing, and she's successful and confident and so.
Yeah, yeah. I was highly critical of myself, which is why my self-esteem was so low. And I had lots of fantastic things happening to me, for me. And I just couldn't believe it that for me, like, because my self-esteem was quite low. And once I worked through that, it's been just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to just kind of wrap up a little bit with, because I did want to talk a little bit about discomfort, because one of my favorite topics to talk about is the importance of growth and as it relates to failure and discomfort. So, do you feel like you're a person who, at this point in your life, embraces failure and discomfort? You're okay with it. You understand the importance, and is that something that you taught that you have? Well, I know you do with your clients too, right? Fear of failure, feel it's uncomfortable, and
I think I was born with this ability to grow and face discomfort because I grew up in India under a lot of adverse circumstances. Perhaps that resilience comes from there. But I never had any issues in taking risks and going after my things and just let's do it. Let's see what happens. And I always had that, I'm not afraid of a challenge and I'm not afraid of discomfort. But the other point, what you said was when it comes to failure, now that's a very different story. Now, I did most of what I did in my life out of fear of failure. Failure is not an option. That was kind of my motto. And I didn't even think about failure. I only thought about succeeding, which, as you know now, I was
subconsciously,
manifesting,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
unconsciously manifesting success because
yeah.
the word didn't exist. But building a business from scratch, oh my God, it teaches you a thing or two about failure. And I think it was when I launched my business is when I experienced real failure, which is not really failure, but our interpretation of failure. Because as
Sure,
Bob Proctor says, you only fail when you stop, and I never stopped, so it wasn't
yeah,
failure.
I love that.
But and it wasn't that it was I was failing. It's just that it was my perception of what I perceived failure. To me, that was failure. It wasn't really. It was just a journey of entrepreneurship. Now I know that. And so now I can say that when I read those posts on LinkedIn about failure, I feel the pain. I can say
Yeah.
that I feel that pain because I've now experienced that. I know what it's like to be there. And that has grown me in a completely different way. So entrepreneurship is not for the faint-hearted,
No,
and it's
it's not.
for everyone. So anyone who's planning to go into it has to really think twice about it. But sometimes the only way you know is by doing it.
Yeah.
And so, that relationship with failure has been a really interesting one for me. I think now I can say that I embrace failure. Before, failure was not an option. No, but
You
then
know,
it helped me.
you're it's really interesting because you're giving me so many aha moments. First of all, I would also just say that entrepreneurship is it is hard, and this is why one of the reasons why I wanted to have this show, because I didn't want to come out with that it's all great, that you can be at seven figures in a month, and it's you're never going to struggle, and that is not true. It is glorious in many ways. I lost a lot of income when I went into being a business owner as an author and podcaster, which really makes me nothing as a podcaster. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm very lucky that I don't have to change that, because there's so many great things about it. But I love your honesty about that, because that's exactly why I am here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the aha moment for me is I have always thought of myself as someone who embraced failure, but the truth is I I embrace failure in others. And I can tell you countless stories of when I was in management and leadership, and I'd always encourage my team, gave them a safe space. And when they failed, they would come to me and say, "Look, I failed." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let's just figure it out and we'll grow from this." But myself, self failure, oh no, I'm out. If I would do something even minuscule that I perceived as a self failure, it would take me, I would melt, I have meltdowns, whatever. So I appreciate, first of all, that aha moment, because I think I'm better now, but I don't think that maybe in the past I have been a strong embracer of my own failure. Definitely others, but perhaps preaching it more than I've practiced it. So
Yeah,
thanks
and
for that.
failure is very uncomfortable. And like I said, even though we're saying failure, but we know there's no such thing as failure, it's only learnings.
Right.
But yes, being there when everything you're trying is not working and you're not where you're at, that feeling that, is it me? Am I doing something wrong, or is it just
Right.
circumstances? But now I realize, because my previous old self would be really hard on her, because failure is not an option. And so if this is not working, what's wrong? Right.
Yes.
But now I understand that actually this is a journey. Success isn't linear. It's isn't this linear graph. It's those scribbles that a child makes, like up and down, up and down. And so I just have to, it's like how soldiers, they retrain their mind, right?
Yeah.
They have higher tolerance to stress than the average person because of the nature of the job. And so they are introduced with microdoses of stress to increase their tolerance of
Yeah.
stress. And so we just have these microdoses of failure, and it increases our tolerance. And so, and that's what you see in entrepreneurs. I mean, I know Elon Musk is a controversial figure, but didn't one of his spacecrafts explode again? But you see,
Probably.
he keeps going at it. He keeps
I
going at
blocked it out,
it, right?
Jyotsna. I block it all
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So you see it in, let's say,
Yeah.
Richard Branson, for example, the UK-based entrepreneur. He failed so many times. I read his
Sure.
autobiography, and I just absolutely fell in love with that. I was like, oh my God, this man has failed so many times, and yet he's always come back.
Oh yeah,
So
Edison did like 10,000 versions of trying to get the incandescent bulb going. The Wright brothers we've talked about before. Yeah, so many. I want to go to the comments real quick. We are going to be wrapping up here shortly. So if anybody has any final questions or comments, please throw them in the chat now. There is a delay, so by the time we get through with our next little section, they'll pop up. But Scott Smith says, "Ooh, confidence and self-esteem. Yes, that really hits, Jyotsna. I love what you just said. We can't live to make others happy." Truth. Stella says that's one of my pet peeves too. Teach this to children. EFT from first grade. Yeah, I just did an EFT session with Stella not too long ago. EFT tapping,
yeah.
and we explored we explored what I just talked about my past when my brother came home and talked about. Had all these lovely names, which ironically, and you alluded to this earlier about that actually helped to shape me into because I didn't focus on looks or appearance. I didn't get caught up in the boyfriends in high school. I was out to be smart, funny, get good grades, be successful. And I'm sure that shaped. So it's really ironic how the things in our lives can be both a positive and a negative. It's very strange. Jyotsna, before we wrap up, what would you like our listeners to know? What do you have coming up? I know you have a webinar coming up, right? And
Yeah, I
so
do.
let's talk about that. And then what's the best way for people to contact you? And I will put all of this in the comments and you don't have to remember, but let's talk about what you have coming up.
So yeah, great. So I have a masterclass, an online masterclass, on the 26th of March, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. And it talks about the hidden mindset blocks that keep entrepreneurs and leaders and high achievers stuck, and a fast track success formula. So I'm really interested. So if you're an entrepreneur or a leader watching this, and if something in your life isn't working the way you expected it to, or you thought you want to, and something's holding you back, I highly recommend that you come to this. I'll be sharing those key mindset blocks and also how to fix them, and so you can move forward with confidence and clarity. And how people can get in touch with me. Well, if you're on LinkedIn, definitely add me as a connection, give me a follow. And if you're interested in having a quick chat with me, there is a link to a discovery call on my profile. Please feel free to head there and just click and book a 20-minute informal chat with me.
Awesome. And again, we will put all of that stuff in the comments so everybody can have easy access to them. Jyotsna, thank you so much. We're gonna. I was looking through my notes. I still have a bunch of notes in here to talk about. So you're gonna have to come back later in the year and do a second episode because this was really amazing. So much good stuff. It really is almost impossible to put this into less than an hour. But I've so enjoyed your journey. I really have, and watching you keep pushing forward. I mean, you're doing webinars, you're streamlining your brand, you just have had an amazing journey. And I know it's not been all positive, but what I always love about people, because I love this in myself, is nobody will ever say I didn't try. And you just keep moving forward and trying. And I really appreciate your sharing your wisdom and being so candid here on The Thirsty Professional. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've absolutely thoroughly loved this chat, and yeah, it's been great to see you and the other listeners and watchers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next week, my very special guest will be heartbeating Doris Walsh. So some of you may have seen Doris in our comments. She's frequently shows up here. She is awesome. She is in the Founders Network, which I mentioned last week. If you are not familiar with the Founders Network, I will put another link in there. It is a membership networking group. It is amazing. Literally half of my guests that I have on this show are coming from their events. It's just a really quality mix of people from around the world. And Doris is in this group. Also look her up directly. Doris is a sister ex-corporate captive. We should just start a club, like an ex-corporate captive
Yeah.
club. She spent 20 years navigating corporate environments and balancing the demands of family life, not unlike you, Jyotsna. She now helps high-achieving, career-driven parents who experience overwhelm and guilt, and she empowers them to thrive both professionally and personally. She is also one of the most fun, energetic, dynamic people that I've ever met, and you're going to fall in love with her immediately. So I can't wait to sit down with Doris. If you are out there watching on LinkedIn, please connect if you're not already, both with myself and with my lovely guest, Jyotsna. We'll have her information in the comments. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions or feedback that we didn't get to, please leave them in the comments or DM one of us if you are able. And of course, congratulate yourself for getting real about your career, your purpose, and your passion. So Jyotsna, Miss Hattie Arbuckle, my hat, and I are going to now bid you a fond farewell. Take it easy.